So this is a brief recording to explain to you what to do if we have emergency remote teaching and you need to set up a Zoom session. So the first thing you do is you open your Zoom app. Mine's, of course, already open because I'm using that to record this. So once you have your Zoom app open, you want to go to the Home tab. And then over here in the corner, there's a plus sign. You click the plus sign and it'll default to being your name, parentheses S, Zoom meeting. Now, it's good practice to change this to the course that you are setting up the meeting for. So, for example, if I had a Bio 155 class that was section 01 and it met tomorrow from 9:30 to 11:15, I would change this to say Bio 15501. I would change the date to Monday because that's tomorrow. I would change the time to 9:30 a.m. because supposedly that's when my hypothetical class starts. And I would change the end time to 11:15 because that's the end time. And then I would click save. I would go to tomorrow's calendar by clicking that forward arrow. You see that I have this Zoom meeting scheduled. I'm going to click on the more button, the three dots here, and I would go to edit. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to copy this link. So highlight it, right click, copy. The other thing I'm going to do is make sure that there's no other settings I need to change for the visibility or anything like that, which there's nothing. Change settings here. Now, you could either have a passcode or a waiting room or neither. I think that the waiting room is probably the way I would go just because I find that easier to manage than the passcode, and that's my preference, but you can do whichever you like. If you have the passcode, you need to remember that you also need to copy that passcode and save that in your D2L announcement. So I'm going to turn off passcode, but I am going to leave waiting room on. I'm going to have everybody enter with their video off by default so that the students can have a second to turn their cameras on at their leisure and not accidentally show you something that maybe they didn't want to, like if they have, um, view of other people in the house behind them, for example. Um, so I am also going to leave this mute participants on entry checked because if you have 18 students and all of a sudden they're all joining and none of them have their microphones muted, that's going to be very noisy for you to try to teach over. So that's what I would leave that checked. So now I'm going to click save. I'm going to click save here. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to D2L. So I'm going to go to D2L and I'm going to use my sandbox for this rather than a real class because I don't actually have a face-to-face class scheduled this semester. But in this case, if I did, I would go to that Bio 15501 course. So now I go into that course, it opens up straight to the announcements page, and that's probably the best place to put this information. So I would click create an announcement, and in my headline, I might say something like class is emergency remote tomorrow. Then I'll type a brief message here. Okay, so now that I have that Zoom link posted in there, as well as my brief message, if I were using a passcode, I would make sure that I pasted that passcode in here at the same time. But since I'm not using one, I don't need to do that. So then I would just click publish. And what this will do is it will place this right on the announcements page, which is the place where your students will immediately go and they'll see that right away. So for you to see what that looks like, I'm going to go back to my main page, open the sandbox, and there you go. Now, my announcement's right there. The students will see that immediately when they log into D2L and go into the course. This link is right here, and there's nowhere else they have to go. They can just click that link. They can do that from their phone, their tablet, their laptop, their desktop. Doesn't matter. As long as they have Zoom installed and they have a web browser, they can get to this. But that's all you have to do. And then for you to join, you probably will just go back to D2L, find your announcement, click the link, and all of a sudden the Zoom session will start. And I recommend that you actually show up in the Zoom session a few minutes before class starts. That way, if students arrive early, they can log in right away. They won't be stuck in the waiting room. You'll have a few minutes to do some tech support if you need to. Um, also, keep checking your emails because there might be a student who is emailing you saying, "Hey, I can't get into the Zoom room," or something like that. And you would want to get a hold of that student right away and help them to get into the course uh, to attend. And I also recommend that you let the class know that you will stay for a few minutes after the end of class in case they wanted to discuss something with you that they normally would have discussed face to face. Now, you could do this as a standing thing where um, you just always use this same Zoom link. Instead of creating a new one every time we go remotely, you would just make a new announcement, copy and paste this link, and reuse that Zoom session over and over again, and that's fine. You could also create a new one each time we go emergency remote. That's really up to you, whatever you want to do. So I hope this helps, and I hope that this makes you feel a little bit better prepared for emergency remote teaching, especially due to inclement weather at this time of year. Thanks.